This is Mental Selling, the sales podcast for people who are dedicated to making a difference in customers' lives. We're here to help you unlock sales talent, win more relationships, and transform your business with integrity. I'm your host, Haley Parr. Let's get right into it. Welcome to the Mental Selling podcast, brought to you by Integrity Solutions, where we dive into the mindset and skill set behind high-performance sales leadership. I'm your host, Haley Parr. In our last episode of Mental Selling, we dug into the role of AI in sales, and more importantly, where humans still have the edge. Because even with all the power AI brings, there's one thing it can't replicate: our ability to read people, to pick up on emotion, nuance, hesitation, and understand what's really being said in a conversation. That's the advantage. And when you pair that human instinct with the speed, data, and efficiency of AI, that's where things start to click. And here's the reality. AI isn't the threat, it's the baseline. The real risk is falling behind the salespeople who are already using it to make themselves sharper, faster, and more prepared without losing their human edge. Because the ones who win aren't choosing between AI and people, they're mastering both. In part 2 of this series from a previously recorded webinar, we're going deeper into something AI can't fake: emotion. Specifically, how emotion drives decision-making and how you, as a seller, can actually tap into that. We're going to break this down using something we call the GAP model here at Integrity Solutions. It's a simple but powerful way to ask better questions, uncover what really matters to your customer, and balance all that great data with real human insight. Then we'll get practical about where AI actually fits. Because again, it's not here to replace you. It's here to make you better if you use it right. And then we'll wrap by looking ahead a bit. What's coming next with AI? And let's be honest, some of the concerns that salespeople and leaders still have about all of this. As in the previous episode, we are joined by Amanda Ervin, Senior Learning and Performance Consultant, and Amara Hunt, Chief Product Officer here at Integrity Solutions. So let's get into it and hear what they have to say about the role of emotion and how that plays into sales and AI.
I think sometimes when we think about emotion, we think that emotion and logic are mutually exclusive. And that's not what we're talking about, right? Like, we want people making logical decisions, and we know what is going to come to bear here when we're making decisions. It's always the same things. It's time, money, resources, risk. Those are them. But on top of time, money, resources, and risk, there is also this kind of there's this additional piece, which is, sometimes people call it the vibes, right? I like the way that Amanda, as a salesperson, approached me. I liked the kind of questions that she asked. The product may be more expensive. It may have a different ROI. There may be something different and unique about it that's interesting. But we can't underestimate the fact that emotion does play a role here, right? Those are some of the interesting pieces. So a change merchant or a bad client experience, right? So if I've had a bad experience in the past with this organization, they may still be a great organization, but something that may have happened that either broke trust, maybe something happened with them that I just don't like the person I'm dealing with. I'll share from a personal perspective. We work with a Fortune 100 organization, and we were hearing that one of their partnerships, they actually just lost the partnership because of one person. One person broke trust throughout the negotiating process, and they said, you know what, we just don't think that this is the right partnership for us anymore, and we're going somewhere else, right? It's a primary emotional experience from the buyer. Needs are emotional, triggered based in facts. What we want you to take away from this conversation is that, coming back to the notion of AI is really great in pulling data, in synthesizing information, in giving us a flyover, in making sure that we're seeing the forest for the trees based on the plethora of information that is out there. But it certainly isn't able to do some of the things that we know are mission critical when it comes to tapping in to the right brain of our customers, not right capital R, but right versus left brain, right? We've got our logic on the left and we've got our more emotional side on the right, and both play a role here. So one of the things that we want to share with you is part of our proprietary intellectual property, which is called the GAP model. Now, the GAP model is an approach for helping sales professionals unlock better questions. These are questions that increase deal velocity. They're questions that help get to close because the model allows reps to tap into both sides of that brain. So on the top half here, we have current situation questions and desired situations questions. Example of a current state would be, tell me about what you value most. A desired state could be, if there was one area that you could upgrade within your tech stack, what would that be? These are logical questions and they tap into the what and the how. And typically that's where we're really comfortable. Interestingly enough, that's also where AI can really help us with those logical discovery questions. But when we look at what we call below the line and closing the gap, these are questions that are more rooted in emotion or why. What's motivating us? What is behind the questions, right? So here, these questions would fall into risk, concern, or benefit rewards. A risk question would be, what's the cost of not getting this upgrade in place by the end of quarter? A benefit or reward could be, how would making this change help your customers achieve their goal? As we start to think about asking these below the line questions, these are the ones that motivate people to make that move. So it's that combination between understanding the current situation and desired situation, in addition to unlocking the power of that emotional side that gets people to move, that gets people to think differently, right? And this is about unlocking not just the logic, but also that emotion so that we can better serve our customers. And what we want you to take away from that is that the idea here is a consultative approach helps you unlock both of those sides. And when we use both the AI, which can really help us on the logical side, as well as the emotional side, which is where the human side of selling comes into play, that's where your performance really becomes a differentiator. And that's part of why we wanted to talk today about this idea of AI being mission critical in the marketplace, but recognize that it's still the human capital. It's the people within your organizations that are going to continue to be the differentiator and how those people are able to leverage AI.
I'm back. And that's such a great way to put it. Yeah, AI is mission critical in the marketplace, but human capital remains the differentiator. So in other words, AI handles the what and the how, while humans win on the why. Decisions are rational, but often the justifications we make for them are emotional, which is why the best decision anyone can make, whether buyer or seller, requires a delicate balance between logic, which AI can help us perfect and refine, and intuition, which is something we've learned throughout our entire lives. And as we heard from Amara, a consultative approach to sales helps to unlock both logical and emotional buying motivations, and as a result, unlock sales success. In this next section, Amanda and Amara suggest a new way of seeing AI, not with fear, but with anticipation.
So let's talk about AI as an enabler as opposed to a replacement. There are lots of really interesting ways that we can be using AI, particularly in sales. And so far, we've talked about on a customer-facing side. But a really great example of this is in one of the most amplifying things that an organization can do to increase both wallet share and market share, which is in sales leadership and coaching. So a couple of ways that we're seeing sales leadership and coaching coming to bear and transforming performance in the context of AI is in AI mentors, AI bots, conversational AI, recorded assessments, open sourced feedback. These are all ways in which we're seeing more targeted sales performance being supported by AI. To go through these at a high level, an AI mentor, just from a definitional perspective, is a use of AI in which is more conversational, where I could say, hey, I'm about to meet a senior leader from procurement. This is the proposal that I have in place. What are the potential pieces of pushback, right? That AI mentor can come back to you and give you some pointers based on your proprietary IP or whatever it is your large language model has been trained on. Bots, which are more transactional. I need this, find this. Can you give me this piece of information? The conversational AI, which is quite interesting right now, which is that practice role play. Recorded assessments. This is a really interesting piece that we're seeing more and more of in sales leadership. So having those recorded sessions or recorded interactions so that sales individuals can get key points and these are the things that you should work on, in addition to general open source feedback. These are all ways in which we're really starting to see some interesting applications of AI. But when you look at this, if you think about sales performance or you think about the ways in which people within your organizations have been coached in the past, if this is the totality of your list, you're willfully underserving your people. Because when it comes to people development, when it comes to coaching development, when it comes to the ROI that you get from those activities, it's more than simply the tactical and data application of what we're seeing here, but instead often comes down to these human-centered skills, these uniquely human skills that are absolutely critical in unlocking sales performance.
I think that we forget sometimes as we're thinking about where we can leverage, that our sales leaders are oftentimes, right? They say, I don't have time though to sometimes utilize these skills, right? I'm so bogged down. I've got so many reports and so many meetings. This is where we can, again, turn to AI for our productivity and our efficiency and unlock the time for sales leaders to make the most impact. And we know leaders make the most impact on revenue and bottom line by developing and coaching their people. And so just real quickly, I'm just going to toss it out to the group to just take 1 second and think of that person in your own life who was fundamental in maybe changing the trajectory of where you are now. Somebody who believed in you, bigger and better than you even saw in yourself. Could have been before your career or as part of your career development. But that person unlocked potential in you potentially had not seen. And there's this funny thing called the law of limited performance. And it speaks to how we as humans form our beliefs of what we can and cannot do, right? So we start to test our abilities in life. That's just part of what we do as humans as we develop our career paths. We start to test what we're good and what we're not good at. And that becomes the realm of our possibility, of our actions, our feelings, our behaviors, and our abilities. And we tend to perform consistent with the level of our inner belief of what we can and cannot achieve. And it almost self then fulfills the belief that our leaders have in us, right? Amanda can only go this big because Amanda only performs this big. And so we really limit our beliefs ourselves and for the leaders that we serve and the organizations that we serve. And where a coach can come in is that they can see bigger and greater than you can see in yourself and push those limits of the beliefs that we have in ourselves. And so when we think about what a coach can do versus just an AI coaching bot, a coach, and when we free up that time for them to do it, can come in and expand the beliefs to see the potential and bring out bigger and greater in our people, right? So by coaching them, we're driving them to achieve higher and greater. But it is an experiential process that happens over time, right? And it takes someone to have the belief in you to push your limits consistently and repetitively in order to drive someone to be better or move a trajectory into a different path than they even saw for themselves. So when I hear we've got coaching bots and we're leveraging that from an AI perspective, I say, great, coaching bots absolutely have their place, and bots in that space have their place, right? AI to help people repeat and practice and get feedback. But if you are asking somebody to do more than just refine and hone a skill set, but really push and press their possibilities of achievement, that's a coach. And that is a coach who can leverage a coaching model and the human characteristics of a person that believes in me, presses me, has emotional intelligence, and can see bigger and greater than me in myself than I can.
Yeah. I love that. As someone who has a large team within an organization, this piece resonates very strongly with me. I think, especially post COVID, recognizing these barriers between work and life, finding that work life balance that we've recognized doesn't really exist, unfortunately. It's more off balance in a purposeful way. And bringing those team together, particularly if you're working in a remote environment, creating those human connections, whether it is for sales coaching, general coaching, team camaraderie, engagement, all of these pieces, there are lots of things that can help. But it's one of the reasons why we continue to see large organizations who could be saving tons and tons and tons of money on not flying people in to be together, on not having those quarterly in-person meetings. And it's because we continue to recognize that the importance of human connection. And just because we have all of these tools at our fingertips doesn't negate that continued need to connect. When it comes to driving sales performance, I believe this is even more important. Outside of certain industries such as FinServe and healthcare, both of which require a lot of in-person engagement and interaction, we still need to be focused on creating human connections, particularly if we want to unlock performance, because it's not just about the tactical things you're doing on a day-to-day. It's about your mindset. It's about your affinity for the organization you're working with. And it's about how you're creating connections, because at the end of the day, that's one of our hierarchy of needs, is to have that kind of human connection. In the face of AI, I believe it's really difficult to find that balance, especially when it feels like we're being fire hosed all day long about, look at all these amazing things that AI can do. And half the time it's just a wrapped chat GPT, but it's cool and it's interesting. And to Amanda's point, it is accelerating our ability to perform. It's taking some of these menial tasks that we don't necessarily want to be able to do or spend our time doing, and allow us to focus on other things. One of the things that Amanda and I talk about often, both as parents, is, call me when the AI can fold my laundry and do the dishes. I don't want it creating art for me. I don't want it doing the things that I want to be able to do. So there's a place for it, but the place is limited, particularly when it comes to some of these pieces. And what it comes down to really is a balance, right, Amanda?
Absolutely, right? That's what you're saying, is utilize your AI for those tasks that can help you be more efficient, more productive, free up the time to invest in your uniquely human skill set and apply that in either sales coaching or your sales conversations with customers.
AI can show up in a lot of ways. We're already using it for things like recording assessments and getting real-time feedback, but it can also act like a sounding board, a quick chatbot, or even kind of on-demand advisor when you need a second perspective. This is where that balance comes in. AI can absolutely enhance efficiency and performance. It can make you faster, more prepared, more informed. But growth can still come from human coaching, from real conversations, from a human, someone pushing your thinking in a way no tool ever will. So, in this next section, Amanda and Amara are going to tackle some of the questions salespeople are actually asking right now. The concerns, the skepticism, the moments of, what does this actually mean for me? Chances are you've had a few of those thoughts yourself throughout your job, and maybe even as you've been listening to these episodes. So let's hear from the experts.
Do you recommend using AI between the sales sessions? Should we build better sales when we're connecting heart to heart? Using AI would be a trigger of presence disconnection. During the actual conversation, especially if it is one where you are engaging with a person, I strongly suggest that you remain present. Anytime someone is either typing into the big robot to answer a question or to get insights, they may not know what you're doing, but they recognize that you're doing something weird. It's that difficult thing for us to put our finger on. It's like when people don't make eye contact with you because they learn that trick that if you look at someone in the forehead, if eye contact feels too much for you, there is something that feels slightly strange about it. I would really only look to use the AI in the margin. So let's say that you've inserted a new opportunity into your CRM and you want to be fleshing that out for, business information or information on the individual. That's the place where we should be using it as opposed to in the moment.
How do you see sellers addressing that trend that buyers are also utilizing AI, right, to do their own research? I like the quotes around research instead of talking to human sales reps. And I would say absolutely, right? They're also looking for ways to become more productive and efficient in their buying. We recognize the limitations of that, right? Buyers don't always. They feel like when they're putting that into the chatbot that they can get the information out of what they need. Remembering that we are experts in what we provide as services and products, we know that customers come to us thinking what they need, but after we flesh it out and really understand it at its core, we might come to a different solution that fulfills the full need, not just what they were asking their chatbot for. So recognizing the limitations of chatbots, right? I think it's even more of a need for us to help our sellers recognize the need for these human skills of asking deeper, better, more custom questions, listening to actually what the customers are saying so that we can help get them to the right solution. They're going to come to us later in the buying cycle feeling like they know what they need. So we have to be very skilled at acknowledging what they do know and what they have and asking really good questions to open the door to a potential of additional solutions they may not have considered.
Yeah, I think from a different perspective, I would also take that back to the marketing engine. When people are choosing their own adventure by doing their own research, you have to be very focused on brand integrity. What is out there, whether or not it's true, is what is going to be scrubbed when people are doing their own research. So again, very, very important that you are maintaining the quality and the integrity of your brand and your IP, whether it's, potentially your salespeople doing posts that you think are adjacent to the content, but not necessarily on the nail on the content. Maybe you're an organization that's been in business for a very long time, and there was a book that was written many, many years ago. It's one of the things that we want to be focused on because we can't stop people from doing it, but we can do as a business is focus on quality control, and that's where brand integrity really becomes important. So how can sales enablement and training evolve to prepare teams for a hybrid human AI future? That's an interesting question. I think right now, the vast majority of people's application in AI is using ChatGPT. So some organizations are doing a really good job at integrating what is available within their tech stack. I'm not entirely convinced that the difference between what the remote or hybrid environment looks like now versus the future is going to be that different. Aside from more integrations within AI, I think what's more important to keep in mind is that as you are in a hybrid environment, controls are going to be more important, right? So do you have people who are actually working two jobs because they're able to work remotely? Coming back to this question of efficiency, am I able to get all of my work done within 3 hours a day and then I'm off doing something else? For some organizations, that may be fine. But as we start to think about performance increasing, with our ability to reduce the time, controls and how people are using AI, particularly if you are not on site and you don't have those kind of IT controls, is something that I would certainly be thinking about for pretty much every organization right now.
And if you don't have a clear AI policy and we're not training sales people and sales leaders on how they can use AI to become more efficient and more productive, people will start to make things up, right? Naturally, they want to get better at this and they'll start just doing it the way that they figure it out to do it. So I would say having clear and defined training opportunities in AI for your company that aligns with your AI policies and supplementing with very human development of skill set and mindset around selling and sales coaching as well too, so that you make sure you've got people understanding that balance.
Looking ahead to 3 to 5 years, how do you see AI reshaping sales culture, buyer expectations, and human connection? That is a big, meaty question. I look at kind of 6 months out because things are moving very, very, very quickly. What I'll kind of shift the question a little bit to focus more on, say, limitations, but like what are some of the things that are going to shape how this is shifted? So from the context of our presentation, I think that human connection and the human differentiator is going to continue to be the most important thing. That will continue to be the differentiator. We're just going to get better and better and better at using AI to be able to perform the tasks that we talked about today. That's my thinking. Two things that I think are important to consider here is one, the environmental impact. So we need to be aware of what the environmental impact of AI actually is. And I read a study, I think it was earlier in this year, that was saying data centers supporting AI and securing the data account for something like 3 to 4% of all global electricity consumption. We need to find a more sustainable way of doing this if we feel that this is going to be really transformative. And I think depending on who you talk to, the likelihood of us getting there in the next 6 months to a year is mixed. The second thing is that the AI in general is running out of what I would call sort of quality human created data to train itself on, right? So everything that has been on the internet effectively has been scrubbed, things that are publicly available, and has already been used to train the big models. So that's why when we see sort of ChatGPT-5, I think we were all kind of expecting it to be this whiz-bang, totally transformative, when really it was an interesting upgrade. We liked it, but it wasn't like going from 1 to 2. Recognizing that we're going to have to figure out how to better train it in order for it to advance even further, and what those leaps and bounds look like, given the more people use it and the more people just enter in, ask a question, and then cut and paste. That's actually a limitation to the model, because without new, really insightful data that we're feeding it all the time, I think that's where we're going to start to see some of the application taper off. So I know it's a big question, a different way of asking it, but that's where my mind is at the moment. Amanda, any comments on that?
Yeah, I think those are some really, really good points. And when we think about it, we're all kind of in this race to get the latest, greatest all the time and stay up to date on it. It can be exhausting to try and have that. So I foresee, a lot of the companies I'm working with are, we're trying to get a chat bot, and we're trying to get this, and and they're just pulling, right, from all of these different areas to try and get the right AI for their company. I foresee, companies like us that live in the training space, we have our finger on the pulse of this because we're building it in, right, to the way our clients, sellers, and sales leaders learn, and how it's going to enhance that. And so we're partnering with companies, right, to bring in the coaching bots and bringing those kinds of things. And so I see less and less of actual individual organizations going out there and buying these individual AI solutions, but more partnering with companies like us for training and utilization of AI, and for, your LMS people and utilization of AI, and trying to let them be the subject matter experts that are always keeping the latest, greatest, and a lot of the organizations then just being the consumers of that AI. Let somebody else make sure that it is on point and it's going to get you the outcomes you need to get, and invest in companies that you trust and have credibility in that space. I think that's where it's going to go. And I think it's going to reduce the number of players out there offering it, and in turn accomplish some of the things you touched on earlier, Amara.
Just like a couple of things to be thinking about as an organization. This is coming from a chief product officer perspective, is if you're looking at partnering with an organization that leverages AI, take a quick look at their financials. Want to be really thoughtful about how these organizations are able to survive, given the costing models are all over the place right now, what those tokens look like. Make sure that you're looking at the data privacy policies. Like if you're using an enterprise LLM, great, but just be cautious about what you're using. And then internally, remember, it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you're going to use an AI to integrate into your CRM, fantastic, but do know that human input is the start of this. So if you're putting in bad data to begin with, and you're hoping that it's going to accelerate your deals, or that it's going to come up with an account plan, a lot of this still hinges on human beings. And that is a really wonderful thing. That's the last thing that I can say. This isn't going to replace us. This is something that, when done correctly, it can really help us.
And I'll just put a pin on that with just saying that from a seller's perspective, selling should feel good. It should feel like a noble profession, that you are genuinely out there for the good of your customers and helping them achieve their goals, dreams, and outcomes. And AI can be very tactical and take away some of the stuff that doesn't fulfill that purpose in a seller's role. So utilize it to take some of that out, but don't forget that sellers need that purpose and that human connection, and so do our customers. So invest in developing your sellers uniquely human characteristics. They're going to need it, they're going to want it, and again, it's going to differentiate you from all of your competitors out there.
Let's bring this home. The future of sales belongs to teams that know how to combine the efficiency of AI with the judgment, instinct, and connection that only people bring. Because at the end of the day, the real differentiator, that's still us. Like our guest said, this all has to be sustainable. And sustainable selling isn't built on automation alone. It's built on relationships, on trust, on actually understanding the person across from you. So yes, AI is a multiplier, but we're the ones it's multiplying. We're the ones reading the room, picking up on what's not being said, knowing when to push, when to pause, when something feels off, or when the timing is exactly right. That's the edge, and it's not going anywhere. So as you think about how you're using AI, here's the real question. Is it just making you faster, or is it making you better where it actually counts? At Integrity Solutions, we've always believed in helping sales teams perform with confidence, clarity, and trust. That matters now more than ever. That's exactly why we recently launched Elevate Selling. It's built around one big idea: sustainment. Because sales training only works if it actually sticks. Elevate Selling is designed to reinforce the skills that matter most over time, using AI where it adds value, but always keeping that human element front and center. AI-enabled, human, always. If you're thinking about how to make sales training last and actually translate to performance, this is something you're going to want to explore. To learn more or get started, visit integritysolutions.com/elevate. Thank you so much for joining us on this 2-part series of Mental Selling by Integrity Solutions. Thank you for joining us on Mental Selling. If today's conversation resonated with you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. For more insights on how to go beyond winning deals and build real customer relationships, visit integritysolutions.com. See you next time.